Good evening and welcome along to the West Yorkshire Football Show. We're here to take a look at Leeds United after what's been a pretty damaging day for the Whites. I'm Stephen Brown and joining me, standing in for Jason Booker, it is Lewis Sale. Lewis, thank you for coming on, mate.
No worries, matey. How are you?
Yes, okay. All right, I'm okay. I've been sulking a bit. I'm glad I didn't come straight on to do a post-match review. But yeah, I've been licking my wounds a little bit, I'm not going to lie. We're going to take a look at today's game. We're going to discuss a little bit of that. We're going to look at the wider context as well. What does this mean for Leeds going forward? Difficult day, Lewis. 12 o'clock kickoff, Portsmouth, Fratton Park, away from home. Fans having to get up at God knows what time to get down there. A very difficult fixture going to a place, their home record's very good. But obviously big expectations with Leeds, had a bit of pressure coming into the game, obviously with Sheffield United and Burnley picking up wins. I was saying to you just before we went on air that, we had this point gap, 8-9 days ago, we had a what seemed like an immovable points gap, and suddenly in a week it's kind of been eaten up. Lou, I mean, just to kind of get your take on the game generally before we go into it in a bit more depth, what did you make of how Leeds coped with it? You're not a Leeds fan, so you can kind of give us that kind of more considered perspective, I suppose. But what did you kind of make of it as a whole?
I actually thought watching the game, the performance wasn't too bad. Listen, it wasn't one of the better performances I've seen all season. Like you said, it seemed like a bit of a perfect storm for the scenario that you might have faced kind of come 2 o'clock, which seemed to be the occasion. It's difficult. And I think when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to sometimes see a little bit of reality. Like you mentioned, Sheffield United, Burnley getting really good results. You've had a bit of a cushion of the points lead at the top of the table. It feels very different outside looking in. And obviously, I know, you guys have chatted about it yourself and Jay, that, you've wanted that cushion, but now you've got that cushion and it feels like it's slipped away a little bit. I actually thought, like I said, you played okay without being sensational. It's a tricky place to go to at the best of times is Portsmouth. They're kind of fighting a little bit as well. Really rate Mourinho's manager as well. I think he's going to go to bigger and better things at some point. But listen, on another day, you get a penalty, which we'll come on to discuss. You scored a couple of them chances, which we'll come on to discuss, and that game should be probably dead and buried. But as long as it's 0-0, Portsmouth are just going to keep plugging away, and they almost sense a bit of blood. And I think we got that this afternoon. But I wouldn't be too worried being a Leeds fan. Listen, there's a bit of meltdown on socials, which does seem to be the case, doesn't it? You're almost a game away from that. But I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I know I said on a round table last Monday, these are the games that you do actually feel that could make a big difference in the table come the end of the season. Listen, it's not on the same. You can't really compare it to the game against QPR last year. But I remember, you went there and you lost 4-0, but you were never in that game. Today, you were always in that game. That performance was, very, very different from that. But, you're going to have to go to these places and grind out results. And it's going to be tricky because, like you say, you've got a bounty on the head. But I don't think it's a disaster. I think it's one of those situations where you're going to get the odd defeat. You're never going to go unbeaten until the end of the season. Expectations have been massively raised from the recent victories against the teams in and around you. And now I don't think Fire could be too disappointed. Yes, he'll be probably angry that you've not got to come away with at least a point. But like I say, I think 8 times out of 10 you come away with at least a point.
Yeah. Coming into this game, we had 11 games left, and that was pretty much the marker last season where the form kind of fell off a cliff. I think in the last 11 games last season, we won 3 games or something. And, after kind of hauling ourselves back into the promotion push last season, it was the last 11 games that undid us. And obviously, I think it was almost in the back of our minds, how are we going to deal with this? Just in the chat, I can see your comments flying in. Thank you so much for your chat. And I want to ask you guys, do you think we're going to do this? Is it going to be a Leeds implosion? What's going to happen next? How do you really feel that this is going to go? Gavin's mentioned it here as well, and you mentioned it yourself, Lou. Clear penalty, and the ref saw that. And I want to actually kind of start off on this because the refereeing standard generally, I mean, myself and John, these match reviews, it's lucky if we get through a match review where we've not had some issue or gripe against the officials. But David Brown, who was on our transfer deadline show, friend of the show, he made a really good point on socials, actually saying that this was a Premier League referee that came down, and it was almost like he's got used to VAR, and VAR will check that for me with that, because the penalty. I mean, it's just so blatant, and he's stood, he's watching it, and you're thinking, you do know there's no VAR that's going to bail you out here. You've got to have the balls and step up and make a decision, a tough decision at Fratton Park, where yes, the crowd would have been all over you. It's a difficult decision to make, but is it the right decision? I'm sick of these cowardly decisions. I think I feel like sometimes the officials are like cowards. Like it's honestly, it drives me nuts.
I think what frustrates us as fans and people watching a game is that some of these big decisions can affect games and have done. And listen, you're not always going to get them right. There's no question in that. But for me, I didn't think that was a difficult decision. I actually, looking back at the replays, I actually think he saw it and he believes it was a perfectly decent challenge, or however the ball ricocheted off. I think Gareth Evans, who was, kind of analysing the game at half time in the studio with Neil Warnock and Joby McAnuff, kind of said that almost like where the ball is directed off his boot, maybe the referees felt that he's got to the ball, but the referee's in a great position. He shouldn't be making that kind of mistake. He'll probably be looking at it now going, got that massively wrong. But I mean, from his angle, I don't see he's obstructed. He's got nobody stood in front of him. I can't see how he's not given a penalty. And listen, I don't think it was deliberate. It was just late and clumsy, and it's a foul. Anywhere across the pitch, that's a foul. It's exactly the same in the penalty box, even though some people do say, well, you might not always get fouls in the penalty box, and unfortunately that just seems to be the way football is, but it's a clear penalty. There's just no even debate about it. I can't see how anybody can argue against it not being a penalty. I think, listen, I get the argument with the Premier League referees. They're probably used to having a little bit of VAR, but for me, I don't even think that needed VAR to get him out of it. That's just a penalty. It's plain and simple for people to see it. And I think, when you watched it first time, probably live, you're thinking from the camera angle, oh, maybe it's kind of got away. But when you watch the replays, it's there, and it's difficult. Listen, I don't envy being a referee. I'm not. Listen, I do pick up a referee decision sometimes. I've seen a few quite recently as well, which do make your eyes open and kind of baffling. I was at a game yesterday where the referee booked 4 people for dissent during the middle of the game, which was just utterly bizarre. But when you're in the Championship and experience the Premier League, you expect probably better decisions than that. And listen, Leeds might not have scored a penalty, it might have been saved, might have gone over bar, it might have gone wide. But at the same point, it's clear and obvious it's a foul.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd been pretty tricky up to that general kind of period, and after that we weren't creating much. We weren't kind of splitting them open, and it's that tight pitch, isn't it? Fans are right there, and it feels like this is it was going to be a tight game, 1-0 kind of either way. Eventually we get the Peru chance, which for me I thought he's got to bury it. He's the kind of the man you want on those kind of chances, and I looked at that and go, okay, I can understand why he's not scored that. I get that, because that's still, it happens very quickly, and but the second one, Lou, one where he blazes it over, and it's almost like this ain't going to be your day, is it? When it's like that, those golden opportunities from your man who has got the calmest head in the building, and he misses it. I mean, what can you do with that?
I think, like you say, he's the kind of person that you'd almost put your metaphorical house on, wouldn't you, scoring at least one of them chances. When I know we were chatting during the game, weren't we? And I might have been quite lenient. I actually thought, it was a decent save. Probably was scared of almost ballooning it over and making himself look a bit foolish, and just to keep it on target. Listen, the Portsmouth keeper's had a wow of a game as well. There's no doubt about it. He's made 3 really important saves, not world-class saves, but important saves to give his side the win in the end. But the second one, I agree. You could just sense, couldn't you, as well, even, and we'll probably go into it again, the Firpo chance as well, where the heads, hands on heads, and you just felt it might have just not been a day for Leeds. And you would expect Pirro to bury them. He has done all season. Listen, he's overcome a difficult start to the season, kind of not being the number 1 choice. He's now muscled his way into that position, and absolutely deservedly so. I think what you'd hope from a Leeds United perspective is that you wouldn't want it to, kind of dip his confidence, because you sense that he's a confidence player. But what I will say is, I think you get enough chances in this Leeds team at the moment to at least put 1 or 2 away. And again, like I go back to earlier, 8 times out of 10, you probably win that game. I don't think it's a real red flag at all. But what you will be hoping is that, if Pirlo does get the chance against Millwall, for instance, he's got to bury it just to kind of put that to the side and crack on to do what he's been doing all season. I agree. Big chances, big moments. I think you called it exactly in the chat earlier, didn't you? You said moments change games. You and Jay said it. It's exactly the thing. And it's one of those where Pirlo buries it. It feels a very different game. You can almost see him, just taking the game by the scruff of the neck and holding on. And, you're going to weather a storm at some point. You're never going to have a perfect 90 minutes, but you felt that you didn't enough in the tank. But what I will say is, despite having a decent performance, there were a couple that were a little bit off for me as well, which was surprising. And I know that some guys have commented, and I know you'll probably say the same as well, but some just weren't at it. And sometimes you do get that. And like we said earlier, it just feels that 1 + 1 = 2 today, and it just didn't seem to be Leeds' day.
No, absolutely. Let's get to some of your comments anyway. Thank you for getting in touch. Please do like the video as well. Get subscribed to the channel. It really does help us out as well. Gavin, we look very ordinary all of a sudden. Can see Burnley winning it now. Skip thought that was Tanaka's worst game for us. He lost the ball so many times. I'm going to talk about Tanaka because, I don't know what happened today, to be honest, for him.
Can I just ask that question back to Gavin? In terms of looking ordinary, I'd like to know how you look ordinary. I'm not too sure how you look ordinary. You're beating Watford 4-0, beating Sunderland, beating Sheffield United. Yes, you've come on the back of it, a draw against West Brom, and today you weren't that bad. I don't think you looked ordinary. I would be interested to kind of know of what that feels like from Leeds fan. Listen, I know there's expectation, 100% get that, no doubt about it. But I wouldn't say you look ordinary. I think you still look like, challengers for that title or even second place.
Yeah, good stuff. What else we got on here? Tom Meslier had a decent game until his mix up with Roden. We have 3 or 4 good chances and didn't take them.
Agreed.
Gavin, no urgency from 1 minute to 95. The goal, Lewis, bit of debate, I think, about is this another Meslier howler or not? And I don't think it's a howler. The ball kind of gets whipped through. It should be stopped at source. Not too sure what the centre-backs can do because it's just an unbelievable ball going through. For me, Meslier completely dithers. He kind of, you watch him and he's running out to it and then stops and kind of does the okey-cokey, goes back in and kind of, he's 1 foot in, 1 foot.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, he's caught in no man's land. And I actually thought, and I want to do kind of prefix that by saying I thought he had a good game, Meslier, today. I thought his handling, I thought the way he was coming out and punching, his distribution was normal. It was up to his level. But that one thing you're looking at and going, just go out and grab the ball, clear it.
Moments in it. Yeah, it's moments again, isn't it, Brownie, from what we've chatted about. I saw it probably a bit differently to the likes of Jen, who's commented during the game with ourselves. I agree. I think the ball can be stopped at source a little bit better. I thought the ball was a really good ball, and I think the run from Bishop was superb. Exactly what you want to do as a striker: run on the arc, catch him cold, in between both central defenders. Strike is almost followed him, but then maybe he's thinking it's going to go through to Rodon. Rodon's caught in 2 minds, and I don't even think it's Rodon's fault. I think it's just a great ball and a great run. I agree. I think Meslier should either commit himself fully or stay on your line. You've got to do one or the other. You can't be looking back and thinking, do I go? Do I not go? Do I not make myself big? Do I dive low? What do I need to do? He's almost had too many emotions and feelings going on in the space of 2 seconds. As a goalkeeper at the highest level, you've got to make a split decision. And whether it's right or wrong, you've just got to live and die by that. I think probably looking back again, he'll be thinking, I should have made one decision or the other. To blame Rodon, I thought was unfair, if I'm being honest. But for me, as well as a goalkeeper, if you are going to come out like he eventually did, make yourself big. Put your arms up. Go old school Peter Schmeichel and make yourself as big as you possibly can. But for me, what he did is he almost went low, and it gives Bishop the opportunity. And it's a lovely finish from a striker. Don't get me wrong, but there's only one way Bishop can go. Then he ain't going to put it underneath him because Melia's committed. The only way is to go over the top. Lucky he's got a inside post deflection and gone in the back of the net, but it just makes it probably a little bit easier for Bishop than what it should have been. I agree with you, Brown. It doesn't feel a howler. I don't even say it's a mistake. I think it's just one of those situations where probably is a mistake. He just needs to either, like I say, stay in his line and trust your defence and trust your own instinct one-on-one, which you can do on occasions. Or like you say, come off your line and commit yourself. And I think even if you commit yourself, yes, you do run a risk of potentially giving a penalty like we've seen this afternoon with Kepa at Bournemouth, which was a mind blown. But what you see is what you get. You either commit yourself, but you make a go of it. But like I say, I think that's where the frustration was from everyone. It was almost like, what you're doing, Melia, you've got to do what you got to do. And again, it's another talking point, which is unfortunate because, like you say, he's had a decent game. He's come into his own a little bit in recent games after a tricky start to the season and midway through it. You can sense he had a bit of confidence in him playing the ball, like say handling wise. He was hitting it long as well. He was hitting the channels, which was decent.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those situations where you can't just be set back. Similar to Peru, you can't let that affect Melia and get in his head now. He's just got to kind of put it away. I don't think he'll probably think he was at fault for that. I don't think Rodon will think he's at fault for that. I just think there needs to be better communication between the pair of them. Either Rodon says, come for it, or I'll go for it and commit yourself.
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship between them two because obviously...
Yeah, it's a bit tasty, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you saw it straight after the goal, the shouting at each other immediately. There's, when the whole mistake happened and, Rodon was really kind of all over Melia at that point. So maybe not the kind of, I don't know, most cohesive relationship between centre-back and keeper. And I can't blame Rodon, to be honest, with some of the stuff that Melia has been pulling, even though I do think he has kind of stepped up the last few games, apart from opening minutes at Sheffield United.
Yeah, true. And I think it's difficult because Rodon's been an absolute rock for you guys this season. Probably one player who you expected to do well, but probably might not have been on the starting lineup every week and has performed as consistent. He's probably been about a 7 out of 10 nearly every game at least, hasn't he? Yeah. He's almost been that first bit of your spine for the team. And listen, you've got to have a good relationship between your keeper, and when you have a little odd mistakes like this can happen every so often, it puts a little bit of pressure on. But also, I think you're in a situation, and you've put yourselves in this situation at Leeds where, again, there's that expectation, and there is that pressure on you to deliver it as best in quality as you possibly can on a day. And when stuff doesn't go right, yes, it's disappointing, but actually maybe it's a good thing to see that the players do care and that they are committed. They could have easily walked away, both of them just gone, so what? Both of them didn't. Both of them will probably have sorted out in the changing room. That's just part and parcel of the game, and it'll be moved on. But it's a situation where it does look tasty, and it's one that probably Farke might just want to keep an eye on just towards the end of the season, because it probably won't be the last time, in my opinion, that something like this might happen. Yeah,
indeed. Speaking of individual performances, Skip here, whole team underperformed today, but Aronson and Tanaka were shocking. Now, Tanaka, who, if I was going to reveal who my kind of player of the season has been so far, I would actually say Tanaka. I think, the word that I use with Jason on some of the match reviews is trust. So it's that player who you trust from minute one, who, he's not going to get flustered. He's not going to give the ball away. He kind of plays at like 7 or 8 out of 10 every week, if not 9, sometimes 10. But today, today it was an absolute stinker for me. I mean, the amount of times he got caught in possession, the amount of times he gave the ball away cheaply. I thought, is it his twin brother or something in there? I mean, I just didn't understand what was going on. And I think it really, really hurt us, because I think in the middle of the park, in an atmosphere like that, against an opposition like that, you need that guy in there to be rock steady and up to the level that he's shown previously. So a bit of a head scratcher. It's not something I'm going to dwell on as a Leeds fan, because I know the next game he's going to go in and he's probably going to play a blinder. And look, it's one bad performance, probably all season. But a tough one to take. I mean, it's frustrating to see, is it, when you've got such a top player deliver a performance like that when really you needed them to be at it. And what's going on there? Is that just purely played a lot of games, maybe a bit tired, or is it, something a bit deeper?
Personally, I think it's more the first option of that. I think it's more of sometimes you can just not have a great day at the office. It did look sloppy. I completely agree with you, Brownie. I think trust is a really good word for me. It's control as well. It just controls everything that's good about Leeds United. It's been probably the signing of the season. definitely in the Championship, and I would almost argue in the top 5 in England in terms of value and what he's offered to the team. Sometimes you can have them days, and I think what probably doesn't help is that, yes, like I mentioned earlier, the performance wasn't as bad as what people may make out, but nobody else really stepped up and kind of took on that mantle of taking over from Tanaka. You want to see Gruev, and Gruev did okay, but without being spectacular. I know there were question marks over Gruev starting ahead of Rothwell. We all know that's been a bit of a rotation system between Farke and the games throughout the season. But almost if you're expecting one player to maybe have an off day, you'd hope that somebody would really step up and take that opportunity. I know Skip said it there. We've said it, haven't we, Brownie, about Ampadu. It's just a massive miss. It's a massive miss from what I've seen. And I think those kind of games are exactly the player you want alongside. If Tanaka does have a bit of a shaky game, you know that Ampadu is going to be probably stepping up and, kind of arm around the shoulder and make sure that they feel loved and almost getting through that game. Gruev's not that kind of character at all. He's a bit quiet. He tries to not play his own game, but it's quite stylistic of how he goes about his business without being spectacular. Ampadu's a big miss. He is in games like this. We said earlier that he's versatile either at the back for striker, who sometimes can be very sloppy, or he can slot in midfield if somebody's sloppy. He ain't got the option at the moment, and we said it when Ampadu got injured. It's a big blow for you guys to the end of the season. You take Ampadu out of anybody in this Championship, he's a huge loss. And when he's your lead and your captain, and you can tell how important he is when he's going on the pitch at the end of the game, when you've won at Ellen Road and getting everybody together, that's how important and integral he is to your team. So I think from Tanaka's perspective, it's not one to worry about. It's easy to get on somebody's back after a game. I think if he's having 3 or 4 bad games, Farke might go, maybe just rest him a bit. But I don't sense he's that kind of player. I think he's one of those players that will just let it go by and, kind of write it off and go on to the next one. But it's something, again, that Farke's just going to have to manage. And listen, he's done a great job so far this season in difficult situations, real high, intense pressure on him. And he's delivered. So I don't think there's any doubt about it. I know Gavin said there, he's had credit in the bank. I agree, 100% agree with that. Sometimes you're allowed that off day every so often. But to be fair, if I could change it, he gave Rothwell, 15, 20 minutes as well to prove himself as well. Difficult, like you said, difficult atmosphere, difficult game. Maybe you could think, maybe bring Tanaka off a little bit earlier, but like you said, Brownie, he's somebody you trust, and he's somebody that you think could just deliver the goods when you really need it. Today just wasn't that day.
Yeah, indeed. I agree with 100% of that. And I think the Ampadu thing, when it got announced that he was out again, that was one of the thoughts in the back of my head that was, if we screw this up, that will be one of the reasons why we screw this up, because we haven't got Ethan Ampadu in this squad. Because I remember at the start of the season, he got the knee injury the first time round and he was out. And we struggled away from home. Not struggled, but we found it hard to get a run together. And I remember the discussion being Leeds can't win away from home, blah, blah, blah. He's come back into the team, and suddenly it's rock solid. And we're picking up wins, win. And it's no coincidence that the best run of the season is when he's been in centre back, and ahead of Pascal Struijk. And I think it's a devastating blow that he's not going to be around. And I know they're trying to avoid him having an operation in the hope he can play some part this season. I don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't think there's any way that Ampadu gets back. And I think if he does, he may be limited. He might make the injury worse. Who knows? But I can't see, with what has been described, him coming back into the fold this year. And I think that's a massive problem. I think it's a huge, huge problem. I think if there is anything that can kind of stop us, it may possibly be that, because you need those type of players. He's the captain first and foremost. And, with Struijk, look, on this channel, me and Jason were not Pascal Struijk's biggest fans in terms of probably how generally the fan base sees him. For me, I think we've seen it time and time again with Pascal. I mean, some of the decision making today was shocking, and I think it hurts us. I really think it hurts us, and I think it's it's the biggest headache we've got is, what do we do about this Ampadu shaped hole in the side? Really,
I 100% agree. Watching you guys when I do, because with respect, you've got a forward line, especially the wingers. You've got really good strength in depth there. But I think somebody like Ampadu, listen, we're not saying it's a one-man team, but when you're losing a leader who just knits everything together in defence and in midfield, is that cog in the machine that just makes things tick over. It does all the dirty stuff, the unknown stuff that people don't really notice.
Yeah.
And you only notice it when he's missing.
Yeah.
He's ball-footed. He galvanises players. His passing range is very underrated for me. Listen, I'll be brutally honest. I wasn't a massive Ampadu fan previously. Probably a bit unfairly because I've probably not watched him enough until he joined Leeds, and now I watch him and I'm thinking, you're a player. He's Premier League quality. And like I say, you only notice this kind of player when he's not playing for you. And with respect to the likes of, I'll throw even Tanaka in there and Rothwell and Gruev, they're not a patch on somebody like Ampadu, who they all have different traits and different qualities, but Ampadu feels more of a rounded individual who is a complete team player and he gets the best out of everybody around him. And I think it will hurt you. I mean, what do you think potentially? I'm going worst case scenario, but say there is a little bit of a drop off, and even though you said he might not come back, and if we're holding off an operation, do you think Farke potentially risks him just to get you over the line? Do you think at the end?
Possibly. I think if it gets to a stage where we need that kind of input, possibly. I just don't know when that works. When a player is just clearly injured, and it's just what version of Ampadu are you going to get at that point if he clearly needs an operation? But it might be a roll of the dice. Who knows? Another one, obviously, and it was mentioned in the chat there, as Gavin says, Tanaka's got credit in the bank, but Brendan has not. Brendan Aronson, myself and Jay, we're big fans of Brendan. I think he's been really good this season. Not technically the most perfect person. I don't think he should be starting for us in the Premier League if we get there. Squad, definitely not starting for me, not good enough. Just technically not good enough. But he's given so much to this team over the course of the year, especially the defensive kind of work and everything. But I've got to say, he's been anonymous last two games. I mean, for you, when you're watching Leeds today and Aronson is the number 10, I mean, can you think of anything he contributed to that game, really? But in an attacking way, he leads the press and things. But can you think of anything he really did on the ball today, Lou?
Being brutally honest, not as much in terms of creativity wise in that final third. I think the game passed him by a little bit.
Yeah.
I think obviously it was quite heavily dominated, wasn't it? Kind of outside.
Yeah.
Of Aronson, and I think he was trying to get involved, but just couldn't. Again, probably a bit like Tanaka, where it just didn't seem to work out for him. And it was interesting because I were actually listening to our friends at Radio Leeds just before the game started, and there was there were a load of comments coming in about the starting lineup saying, actually, would you start Rothwell ahead of Aronson because Aronson's not had a great couple of games? But the stats don't lie. Listen, there's a reason why you are top of the league at the moment, and Aronson's been a main part of that. What I will say is, and I don't think this is a Leeds problem with Aronson, and I know that there's obviously a little bit of history there with Aronson where some people almost subconsciously and not Aronson's greatest fan. But I think from a football perspective, number 10s feel very different from what they were 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. They seem to be more of this pressing type of player who are not as creative as what they have been in the past, but they almost, like you said, Brownie, kind of lead that press from the front, and almost the old school way of, you're starting your defence up top. It's a very different role from what people are used to seeing as number 10. So I think there's a bit of legacy and a bit of stereotype of what a number 10 looks like. It's not what it used to be. So I think for that perspective, Aronson isn't that kind of player where he's going to get the foot on the ball and he's going to be the master magician of everything that's in the centre of the park to create everything for your wingers and Pure. That just isn't his game. His game is to be full of energy, full of enthusiasm, press as hard as you can, and just knit things together, again, with the likes of Tanaka. But when probably Tanaka and likes are not kind of up to the usual standards, Aronson's going to drop off as well because they're all interlinked with each other, got that relationship. So does he get dropped for next game? Listen, I know there's probably people calling out for it. Do I think that he's a Premier League player? I think he's got somewhere to go. I agree with you. But is he doing a job for Leeds United in Farke's system and how Farke sets up to play? 100%. 100%. And it would be interesting to play Rothwell in that position because he can play in a bit more of an advanced role, but you ain't going to get the pressing that you're going to get. Pirot, again, is not that kind of player that's going to run and run and run. He's letting Aronson do that running. Would Rothwell do that? Probably not. It takes away his qualities of almost being that deep line playmaker, his passing range and his set pieces that come with that. So again, you're starting to tweak things and dial pressure up here and there that actually has worked for you for the majority of the season. It's an interesting question. It will be interesting to see how he goes on in the next couple of weeks. I suspect that he needs a couple of, like you said, big games under his belt now to probably get back in favour in terms of the supporters. I think Farke could trust him unconditionally. I don't think there's a doubt about that. But what I will say is again, probably the likes of, probably Tanaka, you can kind of, be a little bit different strike you could probably throw in there. But again, there's no cover at the moment with Verbu kind of being injured as well. But you just need the performance just to stand out if others aren't up to it. And when you get one or two players off, it makes a big difference in the championship. You're not going to, and I know you guys have said this and Jay said it as well, you're not going to win every game. You're not going to steamroll teams. It's a championship. It's a tough division. People think you're going to go to Portsmouth and win comfortably. Think again. And you've seen that today, that if you have players, you can get beat. And Aronson, again, is probably in that camp where he might be a little bit more inconsistent because of the nature of his play and how he goes. But I wouldn't get on his back. I wouldn't say that he needs to be dropped for next game because you just know that, Tanaka will probably step up and Aronson might just thread balls through to Pirot to finish and he'll score that goal on Wednesday. But yeah, there's no drama for me at all with Aronson.
No, I agree completely with that. About probably 5 or 10 minutes before Portsmouth scored, it felt very like it was heading that way. You could feel the crowd are getting up, they're pressing as they're winning every second ball. We were struggling really to knit anything together at that point. Is there an argument that Farke dropped the ball a little bit and should have dealt with that, maybe nipped that in the bud, or these days you've got so many subs you can bring on, should he have tried to intercept that flow from Portsmouth before it resulted in the goal? Because it almost felt a little bit on the cards at that time. They had the wind in the sails, the crowd were up, they're starting to create things. Did Farke do enough to kind of stem that, do you think?
It's definitely a good question. It's definitely probably one that he'll probably ponder on tonight. I think there's an element of hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? When you concede that goal, you're thinking he should have changed it earlier. What I will say, and I've said this, the defence is a little bit of a weak spot for me for Leeds.
Yeah.
And I think, today, again, I said it before about the goal and my thoughts on that, but I think throughout the season, you've shown a little bit of not a soft underbelly, but it seems to be the point of that teams can get at you. When the crowd's getting on top of you, Leeds are used to that pressure at Ellen Road. If you've got anybody on your side and used to big atmospheres, Ellen Road's the biggest place to go in the championship. So there's going to be no players out there going, I'm not too sure about this atmosphere. It's a bit loud and I'm not sure if I can handle it. They've shown they can handle it all season. Yes, it's away from home and it feels probably a bit more intimidating in terms of the closeness and you're away from home and all that kind of ingredients thrown into the ball. But again, like I said, it's one of those where if it's 0-0, it's not a bad decision. 1-0, you can kind of look back and go, maybe you should have done. But it's easy to criticise, isn't it, when it's happened. Do I think he could have probably changed it a bit earlier? He probably could. He could have probably brought Tanaka off maybe a bit earlier. He could have mixed it up a little bit. Maybe could have brought Aronson off a little bit earlier. But if some buts and maybes, it's just one of those where you could have stuck it out at 0-0. You could have gone one goal up. You had opportunities. Firpo had an opportunity as well. So I can see why people would say it, but again, it's hindsight.
Yeah. One of the sources of frustration today, I think, for a lot of people, I mean, especially Jay on our chat, was the impact of the subs or the lack of impact from the subs. Ramazani, Joseph, disappointing again for me. Had small opportunities to do things and have not shown anything, but then do you have sympathy with the fact that they're just getting 10, 50? I mean, Ramazani we didn't even see for 2 whole games before. I mean, how are you ever meant to get into a rhythm? How are you meant to, get up to speed with that limited game time? Is Farke making the best of what, a lot of people are saying is an unreal squad? I mean, we hear so much about, 4 top-class wingers and all this kind of thing. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate there because I think Farke has proven time and time again, with his subs in other games that have won it late. I think he's answered that point. But I can understand frustration, with, why aren't Nonto and Ramazani, Judge, why aren't they doing more? Why aren't they contributing more? Who's to blame for that? Is that just the individual himself? Is it a mixture of amongst stuff? I mean, it's a tricky one, is it? Because I would. That, to me, today, we needed Ramazani, or we needed Joseph, or we needed Nonto to go and nick us something. Go and create a bit of magic. Go use that talent that we're so excited about. And I feel like game after game at the minute, we're watching them these games just pass them by. And
there's a reason why they're not starting, Brown, isn't it? That's exactly the reason. And I think, again, it's an interesting conundrum because we've said it before that maybe you might need to rotate, some of the players to make sure that they're up to speed. But again, when you're putting them on the pitch like today, maybe they're not coming up with the goods. So what's he supposed to do? You've got Dan James, who's arguably been one of the best players in the league all season. You've got Solomon, who on his days probably the best player in the division. So why would you drop them to at the moment, with respect for those on the bench who are struggling to make an impact coming off it? And the last thing you want to do is lose the form of what James and Solomon have been in throughout pretty much, 3/4 of the season at least. So for me, it's, and I've said this in countless occasions on our Monday shows, that managers are easy to blame, but players have got to take a lot of accountability and responsibility for themselves as well. I'm pretty sure that Farke's, we know he has because he's made the change. He wants the likes of Nonto, he wants the likes of Ramazani to go on there and affect the game and impact it and swing it back in the favour. Sometimes it might not always happen. And I get that there might not be that match fitness. I 100% agree and understand that argument. But for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, do it. You've been asked to do a job. And sometimes it doesn't always work out. It doesn't always work out the way you planned. But, in games like this, which was mentioned earlier on in the show, that you just want to get over the line in some of these games. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. But it's a squad game. And like Ramazani comes with a big reputation. Nonto, listen, he's slipped down a pecking order. There's absolutely no doubt about that in recent months. It's an opportunity for him to take it now. Will he change it for Wednesday night against Millwall? I suspect he wouldn't. I don't think he will do. It will be interesting again. Say, for instance, that game didn't go to plan against Millwall. I think he'd probably look at tweaking a couple of options. But people are asking for changes when you're top of the league still. So it's difficult to kind of argue against Farke at the moment. Like I said earlier, the players have got to kind of put the big shoes on, fill them, and do exactly what you're being asked to do. And I'm pretty sure Farke is actually not that disappointed with some of those players, because at the moment there's a reason why, like I said, them two are starting ahead of the others. I'm guessing in training, them two are probably as well maybe playing better as well. You've just got to, as a player, you're trying hard, and this is what I think fans struggle sometimes to maybe understand, is that these players do care, they do try hard. I don't think there's an argument about that, but sometimes you've got to try harder than what you tried before, just to really show yourself. You've got to probably push yourself a little bit even more out your comfort zone to actually knock on the managed door going, why am I not playing? Why am I not doing this? Can you tell me why? What do I need to improve on? Is it my technical play? Is it my defensive play? Do I need to be better in the attacking third? Do I need to improve my fitness? What is it that you want from me so I can be a starter? That's what I would want if I'm Daniel Farke. I'd want my door banging down, at the training ground tomorrow going, how do I get in your starting lineup now? Because, you've had a tiny bit of a blip. You've had a draw and a loss. So it's absolutely the opportunity for some of them players to now stand up and going, it's my time now. Again, Farke's got credit in the bank to go, well, actually, you may have not delivered here and there. So it's time for you to step up on a training pitch and do what I want you to do when you're getting that chance, to show what you're all about. So there's an argument that some of them might not be getting the minutes that they may think they deserve, to have that impact and feel up to speed with everything. But at the same point, wingers are also blessed that it takes one piece of magic to get them in people's favours. And sometimes it can be let off lightly. In terms of some always don't think the track back is what we should do to help the fullbacks out. And we all know Firpose and Bogle are more of an attacking kind of options at defence as well. So they need to support them because usually, I know today might have felt a little bit different. Usually you've got you're dominating possession, you're dominating the games, 9 times out of 10. So you've got to do that dirty stuff, and which is where I feel like I mentioned earlier, some of the stuff going backwards does need to be looked at for me.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. Skip, understand Joseph had 25 minutes, but he wasn't even tracking back and he looked uninterested. Now, I don't know if I'm kind of putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 here or not, but I wonder if we don't do this, Lou, if Leeds don't get promoted this season, I wonder if eyes will be cast back to the January transfer window and the fact we didn't get a striker. Now, it's easier said than done. Mm-hmm. We also had Bamford, who we didn't know if he's coming back or what, which has now been proved. He just can't get fit. Mm-hmm. We had an offer on the table for Joseph. And it's funnily enough, I'm trying to wait to get this timeline in my head. Has he completely dropped off since he got this offer and we turned it down? It's, I'm trying to kind of, does that make sense? Is that what's happened here? And I wonder if it'll be a stick used to beat the club if that happens, because I don't know what's happened with Joseph. I don't know what's happened with Joseph. I was absolutely banging the drum for him to get into the team last season at the end. I thought we might as well chuck him in. I really wanted him to start this season. He had a fantastic pre-season, an unbelievable pre-season. And he started off the season really well at everything apart from putting the ball in the net. And then what seemed to happen is that started to play on his mind. And then the rest of his performance seemed to deteriorate. Mm-hmm. And to the point where when I went to see him in the FA Cup, and Ramazani and Nonto, they all underperformed. That was a perfect opportunity, right? You got 90 minutes against an opposition in your league. Go out there, show what you can do, and try and push for a start in the league. And none of them took the opportunity at all. And Joseph was abysmal that day. And I'm just wondering, I mean, do should Leeds have done something there, Lou? Should we have been that ruthless team that goes, I don't care if we're stockpiling strikers because we need something that works. Have we just... It's okay being calm and measured and, look for the market opportunities and this kind of thing. But did we need to push a little bit more and actually think, well, we need an alternative to Peru when it's not happening for him, or just to be able to do something different? Joseph is massively off form. Bamford can't get fit. Let's just go pull the trigger and get this done. Ipswich, Kiefer Moore last year, that's the example people always throw up. I mean, is there something to that, Lou? I mean, should Leeds have, could we be looking back and going, why didn't they just do something to try and show this up? But, it's just that it's annoying because Joseph's performance levels at the minute, I just don't know what's going on.
I agree. I think there was an expectation, and again, like you said, you were really bigging him up coming into this season. He was given... he was given that number 19 shirt from Leeds United. He felt that was something there for him to take advantage of. He felt like he was first in a pecking order. But this is a difference. It's a mentality thing. It's a difference between those players who were close to being good or potentially great and those who are at that next level. At the moment, Peru has shown that he was up against the beginning of the season. Listen, he had a trick into last season. No doubt about it. That there were metaphorical knives kind of in the back a little bit for him after the way he was performing, but he's shown what he's all about and he's proved himself to be the number one starter, no doubt about it. Joseph has got to do the same. A few things from me. He's a young kid, he's 21, but at this age, at 21, you'd expect him to be up firing and is a championship player. If you're playing for Leeds United, it's a heavy shirt to wear and the expectation's heavy. You've got to deal with it. I think there's an aspect where he offers something different to Peru because of the style that they play. Listen, Joseph has definitely got more pace. He feels a little bit more, maybe dynamic's the right word, but definitely not as clinical as like Peru at all. He's not good as linking a play up. He's not strong in the air. He doesn't feel that target man that you really want up front. It feels like it's somebody you can play off his shoulder. And the way that Leeds play, with the wingers that you've got, it's a difficult system to play, especially under Farke. Do I think Leeds United could have potentially sold him? Yeah, I do. Being honest, I think they would have done. And I would think they would have done if they'd have had a replacement. I think that might be the scenario where it's come late in the day, hasn't it? Let's be honest. We knew it came late in the day on transfer deadline, whether he were going to stay or not in terms of that bid coming in. I think if Farke had somebody lined up to come in on loan, it wouldn't surprise me to take that £10 million and bank it as quick as you can, because it's either going to go one way or the other with Joseph. I don't see an in between. I think he's either going to make it to a really good player, or he might just fizzle out to just being a very ordinary average player. Basically, they're paying for potential out of him, and he's not worth 10 million in my opinion at the moment. Do I think Farke's kept him on with a longer term vision? I do, probably because he's thinking if we get up, he's probably worth a little bit more as a Premier League player. The money that we can bank from a promotion is going to outweigh definitely that 10 million. So it feels probably from a financial perspective a bit more fortuitous. But what I would also question is if you did get rid of him, even if you had nobody lined up, I would be slightly worried about your backup. You can never predict what's going to happen. Peru could have suffered a serious injury a couple of days later and been in big trouble, and you'd have had no striker. Would you play Nonto up top? That's probably your next option, wouldn't it? You'd have probably played Nonto through the middle, which is a very different style to what Peru would offer. Is a different style to what Joseph would offer. Would I actually think Nonto could probably do a better job at the moment up top than Joseph? I probably think he could, actually, if I'm being honest. Probably the system that you play. He does actually link up play really well, and he's probably a little bit more clinical as well up top, even though he's not been showing it in recent months. So I can understand the argument for it, but Joseph has got a big part to play for me at the end of this season. He's got to step up now. He's got to show that he's a good enough second in line to Peru, because he isn't going to be dropped at the moment, it's Peru, unless unfortunately might get injured. But you've got to handle this pressure now. That, like I said earlier, it's up there. It's the attitude. And somebody like Joseph now has got to show what he's all about, because whether he stays or he goes, Leeds United are going to need the best out of him to get over the line at the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't get any easier as well, Lewis. I mean, Millwall midweek, always a spicy affair. We just lost to them at home in the FA Cup, albeit different rotated team. But away trip, QPR, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday. I'm dreading it already. Just from we lost 4-0 to QPR last season, and that was the result that absolutely killed off the automatic hope for us. Before today, we were looking at, we had the easiest running out of the top three teams, but I guess after today, you're looking at it through a different pair of lenses, really. You're looking at it going, oh, God, that's going to be horrendous next week.
This is not an excuse. People might listen to this and comment on this. But when you're second in line, playing behind the likes of Sheffield United and Burnley have already played, this is the same midweek where Burnley and Sheffield United are playing on Tuesday and you're playing on Wednesday. It's not the best way to do it. Honestly, you'd rather play on that Tuesday and then expect the others to get a result on Wednesday, because it could happen where Burnley and Sheffield United turn up the pressure on Leeds on Wednesday and you got to face Millwall in, kind of an atmosphere, everything that goes around Leeds Millwall. It feels very different when you're almost a chasing pack. Again, what comes with representing Leeds United and everything that goes around that. But I'm not saying it's. Well, no, I am. I think it's almost an advantage that some of these teams are playing before at the moment to just kind of show the hand a little bit. It's almost a game of poker where you're looking around the table. Who's got the pocket aces? Who's got the better hand at the moment? And you feel that Burnley and Sheffield United are just betting every so often. They're just putting the chips in just to keep bluffing and seeing what they can do. And Leeds United are kind of, I wouldn't say they're on the back foot, but you're kind of looking over your shoulder a little bit, thinking, oh, what if this and what if that? And it feels a little bit edgy. And I don't think it does your team any favours. So it could feel, and listen, flip it on the other side. Imagine if Burnley and Sheffield United lose on Tuesday. The pressure's also on you guys on Wednesday to deliver. So to make up for potentially them losing. So I'm not saying it's a no-win situation, but it feels an uncomfortable kind of way to go about it. On paper, Leeds United should definitely get promoted. No doubt about that. listen, it's what the first defeat is at 17. Let's not lose our minds over it at all from what Leeds can do this season. We're probably still going to get promoted, whether it's champions or second. I still think that's going to happen. We said it, didn't we, before we came on air? Sheffield United and Burnley have kept tabs with Leeds United. Everybody's been talking about Leeds. Burnley have been unreal at the back. They've got plenty of plaudits, but listen, to do what they've done all season and concede 10 goals in 36 games is pretty much unheard of. I can't remember the last time that's happened. Sheffield United have done very well under Chris Wilder with a little bit of a rebuild as well, considering they've had some tricky, past 2 or 3 years as well. You've had a little bit of momentum, even though I know you obviously lost the playoff final, but you've been up thereabouts, and you were expected to challenge. And again, there's probably more pressure on Leeds United than both teams combined, if I'm being brutally honest, to get there. But I think these fixtures coming up is a real big test, like you say, Millwall, and then playing QPR at lunchtime. This is where this is where Farker really earns his coin, doesn't it? This is where he and his coaching staff really earn their dollar, because it's coming to the business end of the season. Forget performances. I wouldn't care less if my team were 20% in possession and had one shot on target and 1-0. Forget your performances. This time it doesn't even matter one bit. It's all about results. If you can sneak, a win against Millwall, sneak a win against Millwall off somebody's backside in 8th, 9th minute, who cares? Don't matter. Just do your jobs now. And I think Leeds, I still think you'll get over the line. I know it feels a bit uncomfortable, but I still think you'll do it.
Yeah, good stuff. Lee, where's Lee's comment? Sorry, it just jumped up. Lee, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable. I know you feel, mate. Gavin, Burnley versus West Brom, Blunts versus Bristol City up next. Tom, I 100% agree with Lewis. If Burnley and Sheffield United both win, then against Millwall at Ellen Road, the crowd can turn toxic if we go behind. Yeah, certainly. And I can almost picture what the atmosphere, I know what that atmosphere will be like.
Would it turn toxic?
I think even at 0-0, if we don't score in like the first 25 minutes, it's going to be tense. It's going to be so tense. Is the atmosphere? It's going to be on a knife edge. It really is. I just know what that atmosphere will be like, and it's difficult. It's really difficult because it's almost like you're manifesting it yourself almost. It's a real it can be really tricky when you get to that kind of situation. Lee, could something have happened within the team? Everyone seems a little off. Can't put my finger on it. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. But let's have a look at the league table anyway, Lou, before we sign off. So there we go. We have to remember that Leeds United are still top. The goal difference is still very good, although Burnley are chalking it off bit by bit each week. But still in a superb position, obviously, Lou. But I mean, it really is now, all up for grabs, isn't it, in that promotion battle? It's not, a couple of weeks ago, it felt like, we're done here, kind of almost. I mean, it was hard not to feel that way because all the evidence and everything, I didn't really foresee kind of it being like this a couple of weeks later. But it's still a strong position for Leeds there. You wouldn't swap it, would you? You wouldn't swap that situation for either of them, would you?
Not in the slightest. And this is what I mentioned earlier. It feels very different because you've wanted to be in the driving seat. You've wanted to kind of be that, person on the throne that's looking down on everybody else going, we're the best. Now you come and chase us. It's not always easy to do that. It really isn't. And the Sheffield United and Burnley are expected to be up there thereabouts. They've kept, like I said, kept tracks on you all season. They've done phenomenally well. For them to be, 2 points and level on goal difference, having been unbeaten in 17 games is outstanding. You only have to look to Sunderland, who were 68 points. You can count them out, that top two. Forget about Sunderland. You sort out, the difference in quality between you guys and Sunderland. These games against the mid-table teams and the bottom teams are never as easy as what will look on paper, especially ones at the bottom, because they're scrapping for their absolute lives. And you always get at the end of the season some of those teams that will get out those freak results that you probably don't expect. And sometimes when you get to the middle of the season, the mid-table teams are maybe going, got no to play for, so let's just play with a little bit of freedom. I'd actually sometimes rather play against the teams, which is what you've demonstrated against teams in and around you, because you know that ability-wise and on the day that you're definitely better than them. You've shown that over recent weeks. There's no question about that. You're allowed a little bit of dip in form. And like I say, you wouldn't swap your position with anybody. Sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable, and I know what Lee's saying in terms of it feels a little bit like that. But do I see something happen in the team? I didn't see that at all. Not one bit. Because the performance, I echo this again from what I was saying, it wasn't that bad today. 9 times out of 10, you get a penalty. You're more than likely to score it. Them chances, Peru probably puts one of those away. Firpo's, it's a great save from Schmidt again from that. The header at the end as well. It's not a world-class save, but it's a good save. That's Sinija as well. So that could have easily gone in as well, top corner. It's just sometimes those moments might not always go in your favour on that one day. But we've seen what Farke's done across that season, where you've had a little bit of a dip, a so-called dip, let's be honest, and people started questioning, you've come out right end of it. And I still think you'll do that. Yes, with a couple of tricky games, we know what Millwall can offer, and you know what happened last year at QPR. But it feels a different squad. It feels very different for me than what it was last year. Your performance-wise haven't dropped off a cliff. So I think you've got enough in the tank. And listen, it's one of those where Sheffield United and Burnley aren't going to go unbeaten all season either. They're going to drop points. So it's not all about Leeds United possibly having to win every game to go up. That isn't the case, because one of those teams are going to slip as well. So you're in control. You've got the players to do it. Yes, the blow is on Purdue, no doubt about it. Would I swap position? Absolutely not.
Indeed. As Andy says here, teams do have off days, and if Peru scores, we win the game. We are still top and just need a performance against Millwall.
100%.
Points. Okay, just before we leave it there then, Lou, it's a bit of a stint for you tonight on the West Yorkshire Football Show. You're going to be on shortly. Is it 8 o'clock with the Town Talk boys?
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah, obviously big news at Huddersfield Town today, departed with manager Michael Duff. I mean, it seems a bit of a chaotic situation going on there, Lewis, isn't it, really? I don't think we would have foreseen them getting rid of the manager in, but it's, you're going to be on to discuss that with the boys, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be on with Stephen Downs as well as Kane, Callum, and I think Chris is joining as well. I know that Chris and Steve reacted to that news about 2:30 earlier this afternoon. But obviously Steve's wanting to run his own Town Talk specials later on. I can imagine it's going to get a little bit tasty. But listen, what did you say, Brownie? Would you swap place with anybody? Would you swap place with Huddersfield Town? You wouldn't. Absolutely wouldn't. I'm going to get it in there. I'm going to get it in there, Leeds United fans. Absolutely. Would you swap Huddersfield Town? Absolutely not.
No, not in a million years. Not in a million years. Good stuff. Well, thank you everybody who watched along and commented. If you're watching this video again later, let us know what you think. Are Leeds still going to do this, or are they going to bottle it? What is going to happen next? So make sure you're subscribing to the channel as well. Keep watching as well for 8 o'clock for Town Talk as well. That's going to be another fascinating debate going on there. I've been Stephen Brown. Delighted to say having joined me on his maiden Leeds United match review. It has been Lewis Sale. Lewis, thank you so much, mate. I will see you again shortly. And yeah, keep in tuned and check out Town Talk at 8 o'clock. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.